So, I was sitting around trying to figure out what kind of content I should make next, whether you guys wanted more spooks or some silly stuff or what was on the agenda. So I asked the whole Discord server, I put out an announcement, what do you guys want? What do you want to hear happen next on the channel? And I got a link back from our good buddy Yokai, who runs the Discord server. I received a link to a DeviantArt account called Poopsie666. And among the just mountains of incredible content that Poopsie has delivered, the crown jewel is this Creepypasta story, which I will now relate to you. And by the way, guys, this is so epic. It's a saga. A pillar of literary genius. So sit back, lean back, and I will relate to you this masterpiece. Let's begin. Creepypasta story Poopsie. I'm sorry. Poopsie was a normal girl who was 11 years old, but she had a special mind. The other girls were all not as special and teased Poopsie. The main bully was called Bertha, and she wore a purple cardigan and had blonde hair. It was lunch at school, and kids were eating when Bertha walked up to Poopsie. "Poopsie, you are ugly and no one loved you," said Bertha to Poopsie's face. Poopsie sat on her own, as she had no friends. She was an underdog, a stray wolf, a black sheep, if you will. See, look at this, already getting into the symbolism of our main heroine. Poopsie cried, "It's not my fault," as Bertha laughed at her. Poopsie threw her tacos in the bin and went home. I can't approve of that. That's a waste of perfectly good tacos. Shame on you, Poopsie. At home, she cut herself because she was depressed, taking some real inspiration from Tara here. Her mother walked in and asked her if she wanted anything from the shop. Poopsie declined and went to bed. But the tragedy was, she really did want something from the shop. She wanted a knife to stab Bertha, but she sighed and figured it wasn't worth it. And good on you, Poopsie. Way to take the moral high ground. It was not worth it. You can get through this. But the thought of it gave her a feeling in her heart. She wanted to kill Bertha, but she wouldn't. Fantastic, Poopsie. I'm so glad for you. Oh, wait, actually, no, never mind. It just says not yet. Okay, so she is gonna commit a horrible murder. Just not yet. It was the next day, and the sun was shining. Poopsie had cereal for breakfast, but when licking her spoon clean and putting it back in the Poopsie! Put it in the sink, or the dishwasher, or just wash No! No! Oh, that's so gross. When putting it back in the drawer, like a heathen, she took a knife. It was a brutal, ominous, sharp knife. She imagined it in Bertha's head and got the feeling again. At school, she had the knife in her bag. At any moment, she could whip it out and slice everyone up, but she didn't. Not for now. I feel like I'm reading a story of, the inner mentality of a school shooter, and it's making me very uncomfortable. Lunch came, and she sat next to a boy named Grubs. You know his parents loved him when they named him Grubs. Grubs had black hair and a bike, which he rode to school on. By the way, audience, remember the bike. It's an incredibly important plot point. You need to remember that Grubs had a bike. You have to remember that. It's important. Suddenly, Bertha walked up to Poopsie. "So, Poopsie, have you seen any ghosts recently?" cackled Bertha. That's not an insult. That's just a question. That's just a conversation starter. I didn't wish to be born like this, sighed Poopsie as she clutched the knife. Bertha spat in her face and walked away. Bertha's a bad bitch. Like, dude, Bertha she doesn't mess around. You can't let Bertha talk to you like that, said Grubs. You don't understand. I have a special mind, sighed Poopsie as she flicked her hair out of her eyes. Yeah, I bet you have a special mind, Poopsie. Embrace it, smiled Grubs. I see ghosts, too. Poopsie spat out her milk. You see ghosts, too? Yes, that is what I said, said Grubs as he smiled. Poopsie finally had a friend. She and Grubs went to the cemetery together and saw ghosts. I'm finally happy, she cried with joy as she threw the knife at the ground. I don't need to kill Bertha, she thought to herself as she rode away with Grubs on his bike. 2 months went by, and Poopsie and Grubs were officially dating. They're still 11, by the way. Poopsie strutted into school with a smile on her face. Time for another day of kissing Grubs, she smiled. Suddenly, she heard a scream that sounded both lovely yet horrifying. See, it's getting dramatic. It's getting dramatic. This is where things get epic. She ran to find what the scream was, and she saw Grubs lying on the floor with rocks on his head. Bertha stood opposite him, throwing rocks at his head. Dude, Bertha's a fucking killer. Like, this goes beyond normal school bullying. She's fucking actually killing this kid. Stop it, cried Poopsie. I love him. I know. That's why I'm throwing rocks at him, said just the frankness. It's like, yeah, I know. Why the fuck do you think I'm doing this? This is like some fucking Game of Thrones action. I'll throw rocks at him to get to you. Poopsie ran all the way to the cemetery to get the nut. Wait, she just left him? She just left him there, guys. Like, I get it, you want to go and get a weapon, but like, she's not gonna stop throwing rocks because you ran off to get a nut. He's gonna come back and he's dead. He's gonna be dead already. She found it and ran back to school and jumped at Bertha. The two were fighting a battle of good versus evil, and it's... Honestly, it seems more like a battle of stupid versus evil. And you can decide amongst yourselves which is which. Poopsie had a knife. Bertha had rocks. Poopsie was obviously the better fighter. Well, no shit, Poopsie. When you have an implement designed to kill, and somebody else has a fucking rock, of course you're gonna have an advantage. And also, like, that was her mom's knife. That was like just a family kitchen knife. Did they have to buy a new knife for the kitchen? Because she just left it in a graveyard. For what? 2 months? Anyways. But then Bertha threw a rock and hit the knife out of Poopsie's hand. That's the best you got? I can just pick the knife back up, chuckled Poopsie. She had a good mind, so analyzed situations well. Dude, it's like, she's a genius. As she went to pick it up, she gasped. The knife had landed on Grub's face. Dude, this story is hardcore. Grubs has been through the ringer, dude. He's spent all morning getting rocks thrown at him, and now she drops a knife through his face. You monster, screamed Poopsie. Me? You were the one who dropped the knife into his head, smirked Bertha as she walked to class. By the way, this whole, incredibly violent, murderous exchange is just happening in the middle of school. These three 11-year-olds, one of them attacked the other with a knife, the other one killed the little boy with rocks, and then she dropped a knife through his face, just in the middle of the school. Nobody gave a shit. And then Bertha just fucking bounces. That's a bad bitch right there. Grubs, you were the only one who understood me, whimpered Poopsie. Poopsie, moaned Grubs as his life ended. You know what, Grubs? I respect that. I respect the fact that you had enough strength left in your body to moan out her name with a knife through your fucking cerebellum. Anyways, Poopsie was left by Grub's dead body in tears. She pulled the knife out of his face and saw blood on it. Grub's blood. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, who else would it be? The only way I can clear Grub's blood from my hands is with Bertha's blood, smiled Poopsie as she got the feeling again. Ooh, are we gonna have a murder of passion, of vengeance? That night, Bertha climbed into bed. She snuggled up in the blanket and started to snooze off before she noticed a pair of eyes watching her. "Who's there?" Bertha yelled. "Oh, I have a name," the voice said. "But you people tend to call me other names. Crazy, weird, fat." "Poopsie?" muttered Bertha. By the way, it's dawning on... Actually, no, it dawned on me a while ago, but this is a good time to bring it up. If you have a name, if your parents were cruel enough to name you Poop, personally, I'd be alright with folks calling me crazy or weird instead. Those seem less offensive than her actual name being Poopsie. Anyways, suddenly the figure jumped at Bertha, revealing herself as Poopsie, and stabbed Bertha with the same knife that killed Grubs. Bertha let out a scream as she died, and Poopsie whispered in her ear, "I'm sorry I kill you." But you're not. You're not sorry. You clearly meant to do that. You obviously, that was something you wanted to do. Okay, well, you know what? That's the end of part 1 of Poopsie's adventures. But before we move on to part 2, we're gonna go through some artwork that I have found here on Poopsie's DeviantArt page, and I want you to remember that this character is fucking 11 years old. And now take a look at this. That looks like an 11-year-old girl, doesn't it? It does to me. I can see it. Look at the fucking proportions of her ass. He's got tits the size of her entire head. That's an 11-year-old. That's a child who has not yet hit puberty. Can you imagine what she's gonna look like after puberty? Anyways, now that we've had fun just enjoying this incredible artwork, we're gonna move on to Poopsie the Killer 2, Poop Tooie. Very clever naming conventions. And we'll just jump right into this saga. It was night. A killer in a white hoodie, who was also called Jeff, walked down the road. It was Jeff the Killer. Thanks for clearing that up for me, Poopsie. I was honestly confused. As he walked, he saw a girl with blue hair leaning on a wall. "Another victim," he smiled as he approached her. This was no ordinary girl, though. This was Poopsie, a serial killer with a special mind and supernatural powers. Poopsie shot back into a karate stance and swung around and kicked the knife out of Jeff's hands. "Ha!" laughed Jeff. "I analyze situations well, and so I know that I can just pick that knife back up." You see, guys, that's a callback to the first part. This is written so well. This is written... Everyone just... If you have a copy of my manuscript of The Nothing Gate, just fucking burn it, because clearly I know nothing. This is how you write an epic! Suddenly, Poopsie went bright red. He was just like her, but not that much like her, because Poopsie was really unique and original, definitely not influenced in any way by Jeff. "I can't kill one of my own," said Poopsie, as she rested her hand on Jeff's shoulder. "The name's Poopsie." Jeff's cheeks went red as he blushed back. "I'm Jeff." "Well, Jeff, nice to meet you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go. I've got a note to head to abandoned building." Jeff scoffed as he strutted up to Poopsie whilst clicking his fingers like a bad boy. "Come on, sugar. You'll need some help, and I got the goods." Jeff flexed, causing Poopsie to Oh, dude, that's getting hot in here. "Too bad, little boy. I work alone," she smiled as she walked without him. Poopsie had such a special mind that she saw things differently to others. This made it hard to relate, as Poopsie was just too unique and different for the outside world. she had to work alone, for now. See, what a complex and layered character. We could all learn a thing or two from Poopsie, and now that we've got this romantic B-plot with the Jeff the Killer creepypasta character, which has failed to be frightening since its inception. But that's my 2 cents. Poopsie put her headphones on and listened to sad music as it rained. She was once normal girl, now killer because she was bullied and led down dark path. Poopsie looked at the note she had. There was a picture of a masked girl on it. The mask was dark and looked like a mask a killer would wear on their face, as opposed to a mask they would wear on their ass. It made Poopsie cautious, but she knew the people needed her. Poopsie was a killer, but only kill the bad people, but nobody else knew that. Everyone think Poopsie is evil and bad little chick, but really, she is helping them. She's a hero in disguise. See, she's like she's vigilante justice. Oh god. Suddenly, masked girl jumped down from rooftop. She was wearing a trench coat and didn't walk very well. "Looks like I have a visitor," said Poopsie. "No, not a visitor. This is not your house," said the masked girl. "Actually, the outside world is my home," said Poopsie. "I am not a normal girl like other girls. I am a dark killer." The masked girl shed a tear. "Well, I'll see you around," she said as she ran away. Poopsie watched her run like a crazy man. "Nobody around here stays for long," she sighed as she followed to the abandoned building. Poopsie recognized the masked girl from the posters around the city. The city was covered in wanted posters with a picture of her mask because she was stealing tubs of meat from all the butchers in the city. She was wanted dead or alive. That's a cautionary tale, kids. If you steal from butchers, they'll fucking kill you! Poopsie knew she could easily bring her in, but the justice system wanted Poopsie too, and she didn't want to work with them. She was a black sheep and had to protect her fellow people. Yeah, see, she's too cool to work inside the confines of the law. She's got her own agenda. So she's got to work alone because she's so special. She's got such a special mind. Poopsie did not want to think about it. She was so alone, and it made her cry. 3 tears came down from each of her beautiful eyes. And so she ran, oh how she ran into the night to forget her troubles. As she ran, an old man looked out of his window and saw her run past. "You can't run from your problems forever, Poopsie!" he shouted out her. How do they know her? Does she have history with this old man? Like, how do they know each other? See, there's lots of nuance in this story. It really gets to the heart of what Poopsie's character is. Poopsie hadn't been the same since her boyfriend Grubbs died in a tragic accident. Grubbs was a nice boy and had a bike, and Poopsie missed him more every day. Remember the bike! That's his most important character trait. He was a boy, and he had a bike! He had a fucking bike! You guys know, all you kids back in school who had bikes, dude, if you had a bike back in middle school, you were getting all the pussy. But you had to have a bike. If you didn't have a bike, you were nothing! As Poopsie approached the abandoned building, she got chills down her back. She walked inside, and suddenly the door shut behind her and locked. Poopsie jumped up. "Have I been bamboozled?" she asked in shock. She turned around and saw the masked girl standing in the room. "Ah, Poopsie! It's a fucking boss fight! You've been bamboozled!" "Ah, dear Poopsie, such a foolish girl, always putting others before herself," the girl said. Yeah, see, this is our pre-boss fight banter. Poopsie squinted as she looked at the mask. It looked like an old scary mask, and it scared even Poopsie, who was the bravest girl. "Identify yourself," shouted Poopsie like a medic. I guess medics ask for you to identify yourself a lot. I wouldn't know. I am not as worldly wise as Poopsie, who is writing this story about herself. The masked girl just stood there, taunting Poopsie with her voluptuous body. Oh, okay. Is this becoming erotic fiction? "We were once classmates, you and I," said the girl. Poopsie squinted some more, trying her hardest to identify the girl. "I had no friends at school," said Poopsie, "so that makes you an enemy!" Poopsie ran at her like an angry bull, but she slid out of the way as her movements were so fluid like liquid. "No friends, Poopsie? Well, that really is pathetic. You are such a hoot," the girl laughed in Poopsie's face. "Well, I did have a lover once. His name was Grubs," said Poopsie as she leaped and spun around majestically like an orca with her hands in a heart symbol. "A lover? You're 11! Ha! Laughed the girl as she walked up to Poopsie and flicked her in the face. "Poopsie, you are ugly and no one loved you," laughed the girl as Poopsie crossed her arms angrily. Poopsie's eyes suddenly opened, and she used her special mind to analyze the situation. She knew someone who once said such mean things to her. But she was dead. Bertha? Dude! Bertha's alive? Oh, this is a plot twist. Gasped Poopsie. But I killed you in my grand finale. So you finally realize that I am one of the undead, the masked girl smirked. When I was alive, you might have called me Bertha, but my birth is long over. Now I am Deatha! Oh, dude. Oh, Deatha, she's gotten so cool now that she's dead. The girl pulled her mask away to reveal a skeleton face. Poopsie's biggest fear in life was skeletons, and this caused her to backflip in fear. You know, you've really made it as a badass when you backflip when you're scared. How? Poopsie screamed in fear. Her nails clawed into her own face as she gasped in agonizing terror of the sight before her. Her old classmate, now a reanimated, undead corpse. Oh, what a plot twist. I'm so invested in this story. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit ill. What happened to you? You are a monstrosity to all creation. Okay, but that's a little rude, Poopsie. Look, I'm not expecting an apology, but please have the decency to not say that again, alright? Deathus. Wow, that was a... What? Did they just having a normal conversation now? Deatha sighed as she took off her trench coat, revealing her entire body to be a skeleton. The coat and pants had been stuffed with ham to flesh her out. And that's why she was stealing meat! So she fucking made a ham body out of herself. Poopsie gagged at the sight of the skeleton covered in ham. It was truly her worst nightmare and looked really scary. As the non-kosher skeleton approached her, Poopsie used her special mind to analyze the situation. She figured out that she needed to escape, but how? Oh, see, Deatha is she's too powerful. You can't defeat her right now, Poopsie. You've gotta escape. You've gotta find a way out of here. Poopsie remembered how when she get really nervous, she backflip, so she decides she has to face her fears. Poopsie ran up to Deatha and closed her eyes. She was going to do the unthinkable. She was going to lick the ham. Poopsie's mouth opened up and her cute tongue came out. It was a tongue that she treated well, with dignity, and was limited to touching tacos and nuggets. But today, she would violate it and couldn't help but shed a tear for her comrade. This is tragic, man. Like, press F to pay respect for Poopsie's tongue. Remember it as it was in its glory. As her tongue touched the ham dripping from Deatha's body, Poopsie's body immediately coiled up in response, and she flew backwards, cartwheeling like a slinky until she broke through the window. Bertha just stood there in shock. Poopsie was just too clever. Oh, what a brilliant plan. She used her own disgust at the ham skeleton to fucking coil like a spring and escape. She's so clever! Poopsie's body flew through the air and landed in the graveyard. Wow, she went far. Immediately she started to cry, remembering Grubs and his bike! Grubs and Poopsie would ride. Oh, how they would ride with that bike and go to the graveyard and look at ghosts together with their special minds. Poopsie stood up slowly and began to waltz around the graveyard as she cried over Grubs. All the ghosts came up and watched the girl dance by herself, and they all got so sad and started to clap. "Thank you," said Poopsie to the ghosts as they applauded her with tears in their eyes. A meaningless but heartfelt response. "If only Grubbs was here," she sighed. "Grubbs is dead, babe," said a bad boy on a motorbike. Poopsie looked up and saw Jeff sitting on a motorbike. He almost looked like Grubbs in the moonlight, except he was taller, and his name wasn't Grubbs, it was Jeff. Are you kidding me? "Jeff, Bertha is back, and she's going to kill everyone," Poopsie. She never says she was going to do that. She was just stealing ham. It is going to kill everyone," Poopsie cried, throwing herself onto the floor and waving her arms majestically. "Kinda makes you question your morals, doesn't it?" Jeff said ominously. "Whatever do you mean?" Poopsie responded in a curious and sultry manner as she jammed a finger into her mouth to please Jeff. What? "Well, we are killers, Poops," said Jeff like an ominous killer. "Bertha is just one of us, except she's a skeleton covered in ham." Poopsie flipped her hair as it began to rain, her fingers slowly moving down her chin as she purred. "Well, my dear, that's a pretty big difference, don't you think?" "Physically, yes, but morally, we are the same," grunted Jeff in an ominous and brooding way. See, it's getting philosophical. This is deep. This is deep. If a skeleton covered in ham had morals, it would be a skeleton covered in McNuggets. Poopsie sighed. "My God!" Jeff spoke. "You're right! I would have never thought of that! How on earth did you—" Poopsie silenced him by placing her damp finger over his lips. "Special mind, hun." "Aw, Poops," smiled Jeff. "Hop onto my hoopty." Poopsie jumped onto the back of his motorbike. "What does this thing run on? Gas?" she asked. "I guess you could say that," Jeff grinned as he finished a can of beans. I'm sorry. So, it runs on Jeff farting. That's what his motorcycle ride. Wow. Alright. Okay. I'm sorry, Poopsie, but it suddenly becomes less hot when he's fucking just constantly farting into the bike. Oh, we've got a perspective flip here. "Why do I bother?" Detha sighed as she looked into a mirror. "My plans are brilliant, but Poopsie has a special mind. She can analyze these situations and always find a way to defeat me. Her only weakness is her gigantic heart." Just then, Detha grinned as she rubbed her fingers together. She put on her pants and coat and did a little jig to the school. It was night, so nobody was at school, so she snuck in and saw a pile of rocks and a dead body sitting by— Wait! Nobody cleaned up his dead body? They just left him there? Dead on the ground? An 11-year-old boy died in a school. He was murdered. And nobody gave a shit. Oh, this is brilliant. And a dead body sitting by the front. Detha walked up to the body before picking it up. "We meet again, Grubbs." Detha was still the same bully she was when she was Bertha, and made fun of the dead body, throwing some rocks at his face for old times. Detha's violence had caused Poopsie to have an existential crisis, since it was Poopsie, after all, who accidentally dropped the knife into Grubbs' face, killing him that gruesome day. This is a flashback for those of us who weren't here for the first part. Masterfully written. Masterful! Detha's smile faded as she realized how her bants with Poopsie had caused so much heartbreak. Detha just wanted Poopsie to throw away her tacos and to throw rocks at Grubbs every now and then, but through the accident on Poopsie's behalf, Grubbs was dead, Poopsie was a killer, and Bertha was Detha, a skeleton covered in ham wearing a trench coat. It was truly an unexpected turn of events. Genius writing. And by the way, that's not my commentary. It actually says genius writing right here on the page. I see what you're doing here, Poopsie. I see, I got you. I understand. Detha shed a tear as she sliced Grubs' skin off, carefully cushioning his skin with chunks of ham before she stepped into his skin and slid back to the church. As she arrived, a motorbike rode up to the scene. On it sat Jeff and Poopsie. It's a deception. It's a deception now. It's Detha wearing Grubs' skin of his dead body. Poopsie jumped off at the sight of Grubs. It appeared that he too had been brought back to life, and so she ran up and hugged him. Jeff sighed and flipped his hair out of his eye like a cool person. It's not what it looks like, Grubs. I know he has a bigger bike, but we are not together. My heart belonged to you, smiled Poopsie. I'm sorry. It's dawning on me now. Are the bikes like a double entendre for their dicks? And did she just admit that Grubs has a tiny, like a micro penis? Anyways, moving on. But we are not together. My heart belonged to you, smiled Poopsie as she kissed his lips. As she did, she took a big whiff, and her face turned pale. Grubs stunk of ham! Confused, she squeezed his body, and it squished like it was filled with chunks of ham, but nobody's perfect, so he kissed again. Wow, it's actually really hard to breathe. Grubs, on second thoughts, you are dead, and maybe it is best to rest, she sighed, heartbroken. Poopsie, I always loved you, said Grubs. And I will always love you, Grubs, cried Poopsie, as she stroked his curly black hair. Poopsie sighed and looked him in the eyes. He didn't look his best, but she did drop a knife in his face, so she didn't want to bring that up. I guess today will be my last day of kissing Grubs, she whimpered, pulling in Grubs as the two lovers kissed. Suddenly, Poopsie's tongue was bitten, and she screamed as Grubs began to cackle, his skin jiggling as it fell off, revealing Detha underneath. Oh, Poopsie! Walking into my trap once again with your big heart, Detha laughed. It's not my fault I love so much, cried Poopsie. It's not my fault I have a special mind. Poopsie then kicked Detha in the stomach and she flew back into a tree. Detha laughed. I could do this all day, Poopsie. Well, too bad it's not day, it's night, said Poopsie as lightning struck the tree and Detha's bones exploded into ashes that scattered across the city. Jeez. Holy shit, man. This is epic. Finally a proper burial, said Jeff to Poopsie. Now her soul can rest in peace. More like pieces, said Poopsie as she stroked Grub's empty skin. Just then, a ghost flew down from the sky. It was Bertha. Poopsie, you've killed me again, said Bertha, who was mildly upset about the whole evening. I'm sorry I kill you, said Poopsie in a dark, ominous tone which impressed Jeff. But now I have been properly buried by my ashes scattering, I am a ghost and can finally sleep, said Bertha as her ghost lay down in Poopsie's lap. Bertha, you have been nothing but a pain to me. Do you know how many tacos I threw away because of you? Clearly the worst sin. Poopsie said as Bertha began to fade away. Poopsie, remember when you dropped the knife on Grubs' head? Said Bertha. I don't know, I think I might have forgotten that. Oh wait, no, I don't! That moment scarred me for life, you big meanie, cried Poopsie. No, said Bertha. It was my fault. I shouldn't have been throwing rocks at Grubs' head, and then I threw the rock to knock the knife out of your hand. It was all my plan, Poopsie, not you. Poopsie smiled. Thank you, Bertha. I guess both of our souls can rest tonight. Bertha's ghost faded away, and Poopsie got up and looked at Jeff. We gave Bertha a proper burial. We have to give Grubs one too, she said as she tucked his skin into her backpack and got on Jeff's motorbike. Drive to the school, Jeff. Oh, so, man, it's like they had a reconciliation and they finally understood each other in their last moments. And then Bertha and Poopsie were finally able to set aside their differences. This is a bad idea, Poops. I'm not allowed within 50 feet of a school anymore, blushed Jeff. Poopsie pushed Jeff off of his motorbike. Oi! He shouted as he fell off. Look, Jeff, Grubs was my first love. I still love you, but I have to sort this out first and then meet you later. You wouldn't understand what it's like to lose your first love, she said as she drove away. But I do understand, Poopsie, Jeff cried. You were my first love. What the fuck? Didn't they meet each other, like, tonight? Whatever. It's just character development. Poopsie drove furiously down the road, so fast that Grubbs' skin was flapping about in the wind. She drove to the school and jumped off whilst the motorbike was still moving before it crashed into the front reception. Looks like school's out, Poopsie said in a really cool voice, but sadly no one was around to hear her. Poopsie bent over and picked up Grubbs' skinless body, which she dressed back into his skin. Now where was I? She smiled before she kissed him once more, this time certain he wouldn't bite back. Because he's dead! You're literally you're kissing a dead body. Poopsie dragged his body to the cemetery where she began to dig. As she laid his body down, she saluted him. I didn't realize he was a veteran. Good night, Grubbs, she smiled before burying him with the soil. She finally had the chance to say goodbye to her one true love. As she finished burying him, she sat back, waiting to be graced by Grubbs' ghost. Just then, she heard a scream. It was both lovely and horrifying. She jumped up and looked around, and there she saw him, Ghost Grubbs, screaming as he lay on the floor. Grubbs? Poopsie screamed. But you should be at peace now with the dead. As she walked closer, she saw Bertha's ghost smiling as she threw ghost rocks at Grubbs. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Ghost Bertha. She didn't put aside her differences at all, that bitch. Poopsie fell on her knees and screamed super loud that it probably woke some people up. She did not care because now she was a real deranged killer. Everyone had been mean to her all her life and bullied her. She was a bad little chick now, and this meant serious business. Poopsie astral projected and left her body and walked over to Bertha. Poopsie? Yelled Bertha. But you're not a ghost? Poopsie wrapped her spirit hands around Bertha's spirit neck. No, I'm not a ghost, but you are, and let's make this ghost toast! Poopsie whipped out some ghost knives, which are knives for ghosts that can kill ghosts forever. Bertha began to scream as Poopsie raised the knife and looked her in the eye. This time, I'm not sorry I kill you. Poopsie stabbed Bertha with the knife, and her ghost screamed as she disappeared from existence. Poopsie entered her body again and got up and looked at Grubbs. Poopsie, you saved me, he smiled. Yes, that's what I do, said Poopsie as she sat down next to him. Now you are at rest, Grubbs, she said as he slowly began to fade into the sky. Poopsie, he said as he faded away peacefully. Poopsie sighed as she got up again and walked off into the night. She was back where she started, a lone wolf in this world of sheep. Suddenly a tall man, skinny in a suit, tapped her on the shoulder. Excuse me, milady, but I have a mansion full of killers and outsiders like you. Would you care to join us? Poopsie turned around to see the man had no face and tentacles, which took her back a little. What do you have for breakfast at your mansion? She asked as the sun began to rise. Tacos, said Slender Man, and the two laughed as they walked into the horizon and jumped in midair. The end. Or is it? Ooh, cliffhanger. Poopsie, I gotta say, this is a class act right here. Like there was a beginning and middle and end and plot twists, character development, a little romance and some brief sexy times. My goodness, this is masterful. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the saga of Poopsie the Killer. I think there might be a third part, but I kind of want to kill myself and not read it. So we're going to end things here with Poopsie the Killer 2, Poop Tooie. And if you guys want to read the rest, you can do it fucking on your own time. I hope you had fun. I didn't. Can we please stop making me do stuff like this? Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. Special thanks to all my patrons on Patreon, Heswana Yuki and Ex Machina. If you'd like to join them throwing money at me monthly, you can click the link in the description to find my Patreon page. I'm offering brand new rewards, especially for the $1 and $5 tiers, to sort of spice those up. So why don't you take a look, and maybe if you've got some cash to burn, help me make a living. See you later, guys.